This is part 2 of my Audacity training series on YouTube about how to use the free open source Audacity software to create, edit, and master your own audiobooks. Part 2 will be all about mastering. Now, as I said in the first video, which was on setup, I'm not a sound engineer. I'm not a professional when it comes to sound. I figure out what works. So what I think of mastering as, though this might not be any sort of perfect definition, but I think of mastering as making your sound good. It makes your voice sound better, it makes your recording sound better, and it also gets your recording to the place where it can meet technical specifications for ACX or whoever else it is that you're uploading your files to. So when I make a video like this, I'm just using the microphone on my computer. It doesn't sound great, but hopefully when you're making an audiobook, you're using a higher quality microphone that you're plugging into your computer, and then we'll be using Audacity's tools to master it and make it sound better and get it more to the place that it needs to be. All right, let's jump right in. Hopefully you have recorded your first chapter by now, or even a portion of a chapter, maybe 5 or 10 minutes. I've got 5 minutes of a chapter right here that I just copied and pasted from a raw recording. Now, when I record something, I usually just name it by the chapter number, or if you have a chapter name, you could do that. But chapter number is nice because it keeps things in order. And I usually name it that chapter plus raw. So I would have named this one raw. It's the raw recording. After I record, I always export to Wave. Wave is a type of file that keeps all of the information. You go to File, Export as Wave, and then I would give it a name. I've just called this one Sample, but I would usually just keep the name, one raw or whatever, and then I would click Save. And we're not going to worry about the metadata right now. We'll talk about metadata later. And then I would click OK to export that as a WAV file. That way, if anything happens with your Audacity file, you've still got a WAV file that you can bring into Audacity and do all of your editing on. It's just a way of basically backing it up. Please always back up your work. I use Dropbox to make sure all of my files are always backed up. All right, so we've got our file. We would open up, not the WAV file, but just the original Audacity file that we recorded. First thing I would do is I would save it as, save as, and I would call it, if this might have been one raw, I'm just calling it sample. But instead of one raw, I would call it one edit, or in this case, sample edit. And then I would click save so that we're keeping our raw file, but we have a new file to edit. And then I would go up to the audio track and click spectrogram. As I told you before, I really like spectrogram view. The first thing I do when I master is I get rid of some noise. Now, I record in a really quiet area, so I don't have lots of noise, but there is still some noise in the background. And by getting rid of some of it from the beginning, that's just going to help our process. And so what you want to be careful with noise reduction is that you don't overdo noise reduction, because you can end up with a really distorted sound. So I'll show you the settings that I use for noise reduction. These settings are also in this Google document that I'll have a link to below, or you can always find it in the authors who record their own audiobooks Facebook group as well. Under mastering, we've got noise reduction. So the first thing we have to do with noise reduction is we have to tell it what type of noise we want it to get rid of. So I just select a little bit, a second or half a second or 2 seconds. When I'm selecting this in spectrogram view, you can actually see a little bit of noise. You can see the noise on here. You see like there's some, almost looks staticky. That's noise. We're telling it what kind of noise we want it to get rid of. So we select it. We go to noise reduction. Pardon me, I have to let my dog in the room. He's scratching at the door. Come on in. Come on. This is real life, y'all. Apparently he doesn't want to come in. Okay. So I would go to Effect, Noise Reduction, Or if you've set up all of your shortcuts like I did, all I have to do is go Command 1. How easy was that? First thing we have to do is click Get Noise Profile. We're telling it what kind of noise we want it to reduce. Get Noise Profile. All right, we've gotten the noise profile. The next thing we do is we select the entire track. If you remember, we do that by clicking over here. Oh, by the way, there's something else I like to do. I like to get rid of like all of these cut points on my tracks. And here I am. I don't actually remember what that's called. I don't remember what the command is for that. Oh, it's join. It's under Edit, Clip Boundaries, Join. I have that set up. If you remember, we set up keyboard shortcuts before. I set that up as a keyboard shortcut as Command or Control J. So I'm going to do Command J. I just don't like all of those cut points. You may not care, but I don't like them, so I usually get rid of them. All right, we've got the whole thing selected. We're going to click Command 1 again. And now we're actually going to do our noise reduction now that we have our noise profile. In my document, I say that I do 3 decibels of noise reduction. Actually, I did change it to 6. I think elsewhere in the document I said 3. I used to do 3, now I do 6. You can kind of play with things and just make sure that however much noise reduction you do, make sure that it doesn't sound distorted once you're done with it. So we've got 6 decibels of noise reduction, 3.5 sensitivity, 2 frequency smoothing bands. I don't even know what all of that means, but that works for me. So you're going to have a different microphone than me. You may have to do some research to figure out what kind of settings you want, but these are my settings that I always use. And I use reduce, not residue. All right. You can also do what's called preview, where you can listen to what it's going to sound like if you want to before you actually do the setting. But I'm just going to click OK. I know these settings work for me. This is our first step of mastering noise reduction. With a longer file, this will take a little bit longer. Noise reduction is one of the things that takes a little bit longer with mastering. Now you can actually see, look at all that noise that's gone. You don't see that static that we had before. We see this, that's actually a breath. We're going to talk about those later, but we're getting rid of a lot of that noise, which is awesome. Next step is what we call EQ, or it's now called a filter curve. But if you talk to sound people, everybody's going to call it EQ or equalization. For some reason, they changed the name of it on Audacity recently. They're calling it filter curve or filter curve EQ. Now, EQ will change the actual character of your voice. And you may already have an amazing, wonderful, warm, but not too rumbly, clear, but not too bright voice. Personally, my voice tends to be a little too bright. I need to bring in some warmth and I need to make it sound better. And so I always do an EQ on my voice, and it really makes it just a more pleasant voice to listen to for hours on end in an audiobook. EQ is tough. It's kind of a combination of art and science, and it can be tough to come up with just the right EQ for your voice. This is where it can be helpful to get somebody else's opinion, but I'm just going to show you what you might go through to figure out what you want your EQ curve, we're going to call it, to be. And we're going to figure out what you want, how you want to use EQ or filter curve to change your voice, and then you're going to do it the same way on every chapter so that you're making your voice have that same character, that same tone in every chapter. So once we go through, this is going to make more sense. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to select just a little bit to test out what I want to do on EQ. So let's listen to what this sounds like with no EQ. Now, I would be doing this normally with headphones. Right now, I'm listening to it through my computer speakers. Normally, I'd be doing this through headphones, studio headphones that don't change the character of anything. We don't want headphones that have bass boost. We just want studio headphones. You can get them for probably about 20 or 30 bucks on Amazon. That's the kind of headphones you need. So here we go. Let's listen to this.
2 years after the world ended, I was born.
All right. I'm actually not going to use that. I'm going to use a different one because I feel like my voice is already pretty warm there. Let's try something else.
His brown eyes twinkled as he pointed to the band of gold around his head.
Okay, I kind of like that one. By the way, my stomach is growling. That can happen during recording. If I were recording an audiobook, I'd have to re-record what I just said. All right, so we've got this little part sampled, and we're gonna go to Effect, Filter Curve, or I've got it set up as Command 2 or Control 2. All right. This just happens to be the last curve I use. Normally, if you've never done this before, it would show flat. This, nothing has changed. Now, these are different. Here, at the bottom here, we've got frequencies. These frequencies line up with these frequencies that go up and down on our spectrogram view, okay? EQ boosts or reduces frequencies in whatever your sound is. And so let me just give you an example. We're going to click preview. This is what it sounds like with no EQ.
His brown eyes twinkled as he pointed to the band of gold around his head.
Okay, let's say we took out everything under 1,000 hertz. And it's just going to totally change the way this sounds. I clicked here to put a little dot here. I click again to pull this down. I'm going to pull it down where we're reducing everything below 1,000 hertz to negative 30 decibels. By the way, I never pull it down to be an actual square. It doesn't work well if I do that. I do it a little bit at an angle. So let's see what this sounds like.
His brown eyes twinkled as he pointed to the band of gold around his head.
Sounds terrible, right? EQ changes things drastically. I'm just going to click flatten. What happens if we cut out everything over 4,000 hertz?
His brown eyes twinkled as he pointed to the band of gold around his head.
A lot warmer, but it also sounds really fuzzy. So you can see why with EQ, we're usually doing small adjustments, not huge ones, because you can end up with really weird sounds if you do huge adjustments on EQ. So where do we start? Well, I've got some links here. Here's some good articles to get you started. EQ Article 1, let's click on that one. And let's also click on EQ Article 2. All right. This suggests rolling off everything below 100 hertz. Anything below it is not going to benefit the mix, is what this article says. And I found that to be good. So I'm going to click here and then just pull this down. In fact, I want to look real quick. You can close your eyes if you don't want to see this right now. I've got some presets here. I'm going to look at what I actually use. I call it my Magic Eaters preset because Magic Eaters is the series I'm doing right now. Yep, I have everything under 100 hertz cut off. I just wanted to make sure that that's how I had done it. All right, everything under 100 hertz. We don't need anything under that amount. That's where we're going to start. And you can start no matter what your voice sounds like doing that. I've also seen, I think, and I don't remember where I saw this. Let's see here. Okay, that's not where I've seen it. But I've seen to cut off everything. I'm going to look at this again. Cut off everything above like about maybe 15 or 12,000 hertz, something like that. So again, let's flatten. And these are frequencies that you're not really hearing anyways. So we're just going to cut them out. Okay, so go to about 15,000 hertz. Oops. And drag that down. All right. Now, this probably isn't going to sound very different. Let's preview it.
His brown eyes twinkled as he pointed to the band of gold around his head.
Yeah, it really doesn't. Now we start to go, how do I want my voice to sound different? Now, I like to warm up my voice. In this particular sample, it's not real bright, but my voice can get really bright, and that can be annoying if you listen to it for a long time. So this actually suggests apply a narrow bandwidth cut within the 1 kilohertz to 4 kilohertz range. So that would be 1,000 hertz to 4,000 hertz. All right. So let's just try that and see what it sounds like. There's 1,000. There's 4,000. Let's just try. And remember, we're doing little cuts, not much. We do the big cuts at the very, very bottom and the very top. Other than that, we're doing little cuts. It might even only be -3 decibels. Whoops. Not -6, okay? Like we're going to do little cuts. Let's see how that sounds.
His brown eyes twinkled as he pointed to the band of gold around his head.
Oh, that maybe sounds a little bit warmer. I kind of like that. I wonder what would happen if we did it by 6. Let's see if that's too much.
His brown eyes twinkled as he pointed to the band of gold around his head.
I like how that sounds. I'm going to leave that there. If you need brightened vocals, you can apply a gentle boost above 6,000 hertz. I don't need to brighten my vocals, but you could try that. Go up by 3 decibels or 6 decibels above 6,000 hertz. And you would just pull it up here and kind of like still reduce it after 15,000. If you need your voice to be smoothed out, you can change here. This just brings out some nice stuff. Bring out the bass. I like to bring out some bass in mine. So it talks about boosting in the 200 to 600 hertz. So we've got 200 to 600. Whoops. There we go. Let's just see what happens if we do a little boost here.
His brown eyes twinkled as he pointed to the band of gold around his head.
Oh, I really like that. I like how that sounds. So these are just some hints. We've got more hints in this second article here. It talks about subtlety. It talks about using cuts more than boosts. And it's going to give you some suggestions on where you might want this stuff to change. In fact, I think this is where, well, I don't know. I don't know where I heard to do the high, to cut out the highs, but that's what I've always done. But this gives you some more stuff. Cut 100 to 300 hertz to add clarity. I don't need a lot of clarity, so I boost. It says you can try boosting in that range. It tells you where to cut if it sounds muddy. It tells you where to boost to improve clarity. It just gives you some different, cut around 3 to 5,000 kilohertz if the voice sounds too sibilant. Sometimes I have too much sibilance, so maybe I'm going to cut a little bit more going up to 5,000 hertz. A lot of this is just experimenting. I try stuff. I go, what would it sound like if I did a cut here or a boost here? And I just listen to the preview and see how it sounds. And once I finally have a character I like to my voice, I click Manage, Save Preset, and then I would, there goes my stomach again, I should have eaten more for breakfast. So then I would have a preset name here that I would enter. So let me show you what my preset sounds like. I call it Magic Eaters. This is what I've come up with through just trial and error, and this is what I apply to all of my chapters using the particular mic that I'm using right now. Change mics, you're going to need to change your EQ because mics have their own characters. They add character to your voice. So let's listen to this.
His brown eyes twinkled as he pointed to the band of gold around his head.
It's just a really nice, warm sound. It still sounds clear enough, doesn't sound muddy, and that's what I've come up with. So once you've come up with one you like, again, you want to save your preset, get other people to listen to it if you want to, and then all we've been doing is listening to an example, a little sample part. So don't click OK here, okay? Click Cancel because we don't want to just do EQ on this short little 3-second portion. We want to EQ the entire chapter. So we're going to select the whole thing, Command 2, or again, you can go up to Effect, EQ, select the EQ that you just saved, Magic Eaters in my case, and select OK. And it'll take a few seconds, take longer on a longer chapter. You can see, visually, see how we cut out everything higher than, like, in my case, I think I did it at about 13,000. Yeah, maybe you want to do it there instead of 15,000 where I showed you. We cut out everything really high. You can't really see where we cut out low because that's such a small, we really didn't cut much out there. You can't visually see that. But we've got certain things boosted and stuff, and you can kind of see how it changed. So we've got our EQ. Our next step, on mastering, is RMS normalize. This is going to get your volume within the range that ACX wants it to be at. All right, so ACX RMS is this, it's all about kind of the range of your volume where you're not getting too quiet and you're not getting too loud. And I don't totally understand RMS, to be honest with you. I just know it's something that ACX requires, and there's an awesome plugin that gets me where I need to be. And so I don't feel like I need to understand the technology behind that. Maybe you understand it better than I do. But let me show you how we do this. Again, we select the whole thing. You would go up to Effect, RMS Normalize way down here, or if you've set up your keyboard shortcuts, Command 3 or Control 3, and I set mine to -21. Actually, I had it on here, -22. I don't know why I changed it to -21, but -21, -22, wherever it just needs to be within the ACX requirements. I forgot what their exact requirements are, but -21 or -22 will get you there. And then I click OK to normalize. Oh, you can see how that changed things. My recording was fairly quiet, excuse me. And so you're going to, in fact, you know what? It's just hitting me. I was going to make this part 2 of our series, but I think it's going to be part 3 instead. I need to do a series showing you how to set up your mic where you've got the right volume. So we'll probably do a short video on that, because I set up my mic where my volume is always lower than it needs to be, so that if I get a little bit loud, I'm not getting too loud. So RMS tends to boost my volume. In fact, you can hear how this is going to sound different.
His brown eyes twinkled as he pointed to the band of gold around his head.
Definitely louder than it was before. All right, our RMS is done. And now the next thing we're going to do is called a limiter. This makes it so if we have anything that is that's louder than ACX's maximum volume, it's going to pull it down for us. So Effect, Limiter, or in my case, because I've set up my keyboard shortcuts, Command 4. Now these are the settings I use: 0, 0, -3.04. -3 is the limit on ACX. I do -3.04 because if I add in a tiny amount of volume somewhere where it was already loud, then it keeps it under the right amount. And then 10 for the hold and apply makeup gain, no. These settings are all in this document. Okay. All right, our limiter is done. And the last thing that I do is another round of noise reduction. I always get extra noise when I do my RMS normalize round. We've got some noise there. And so I like to do one more round of noise reduction. I select the whole thing. Well, let's do Command 1. I don't do get noise profile again. I just let it use the old noise profile. And then I use the same settings. Another 6 decibels of noise reduction. All right, now we've got a nice mastered file, and we're going to be able to move on and do the editing that we do. But first, let's just make sure that our mastering got this into ACX specs. Let's make sure it passes. Select all, go to Analyze ACX Check, or Command K if you set that up. And look, it passed. The peak level is where it needs to be. The RMS level is where it needs to be. The noise floor, it actually says is too low. Don't worry about that. We're going to add in a little bit later. And I don't know, actually I think it used to do that where it says dead silence sounds unnatural. That's new on this ACX check. I just wouldn't worry too much about that. As I told you, we're going to make sure we have a really nice, like, consistent room tone underneath this entire recording in a little while. And I've never had anything sent back from ACX for too low noise floor before. So I appreciate that feedback, but I think we're actually okay. It didn't fail. They're just giving me a warning. And as long as it sounds okay, we're probably okay. All right. That's our mastering, guys. The most difficult part is going to be to figure out what you want your EQ to sound like. That's where you're going to have a lot of trial and error. But once you've figured it out, you save it and you use it over and over and over, which is awesome. Let me show you how I make this mastering go a lot faster. I use something called a macro. Once you've set everything up, you can do a macro. And we're going to go down in our document here all the way to time savers. And I love doing this. It's the coolest thing. So we go to tools, macros. All right, we're going to say new macro. I've already got mine set up, but new macro. I'm just going to say sample. And a macro, all that it does is it automates a bunch of different things, so you don't have to do them all separately. It's going to automate almost our entire mastering process. The first thing we're going to add, let's go back to our mastering list. Goodness, where is it? There it is. First thing is noise reduction. So we say we're going to insert a step. Insert. Let's, we can't search on here. I was trying to search. We just have to scroll, find noise reduction. Noise reduction. We're going to say edit parameters. Make sure that the parameters are where we set them. They should already be there. Yep, that's where they need to be. And we click OK. You can even look here, preset factory defaults, which, hang on. Yeah, I mean, it's whatever you've set up as the default, basically. So, all right, next thing we're going to add is EQ. So we get insert. Oh, it's called filter curve, sorry. Filter curve, I need to change that over here. Oh, I already changed it. Okay, filter curve, edit parameters. We make sure that we have selected the one that you saved. It's there because it's the last one I used. You just make sure that's the one that's up. Okay. Okay. Next is RMS normalize. RMS normalize. Let's make sure these parameters, yep, they're where we want them to be. Okay. Next is limiter. Oopsie. I'm still trying to search instead of scrolling. Here we go. Limiter. Okay. And last is one more round of noise reduction. Oops. And we know that that's already set up at the right settings. You could click and make sure, but we know that it is. And then the last one is end. And you would say, okay. Now to use this macro, I'm going to go back to my unmastered sample, okay? So I would show you how I'd actually use this macro. Let's save this. Close it. Sample. Okay, this is my unedited sample. I'm going to change it to spectrogram view. Remember that you would normally save as sample edit, or chapter 1 edit or whatever. I'm not going to save it because I've already done that, and I'm just gonna show you how this works. So to use your macro, first of all, I like setting up a keyboard shortcut for my macro. All right, Command, comma. I'm gonna remember I named that macro sample. I'm gonna search for it. Apply macro sample, and then I would put in here Command 8. That's what I like for my mastering macro keyboard shortcut. Not going to do it here because my Command 8 is already attached to my macro, okay? My macro that I use, but you would do Command 8 and then OK. So first thing we do, we always have to get that noise sample for noise reduction before we start our macro. So you select some noise, Command 1, get noise profile. Okay, that's how we always start with our mastering. But then check this out. I'm going to select the entire thing, do Command 8. That's what I just set up for my macro. If you wanted to do it manually, you would just go up to Tools, Apply Macro, and you would click Sample. Okay, I've got mine set up as Command 8. And then we just sit here and we wait. Hey, look, it's doing the noise reduction. Nice. Sometimes it like stops telling me what it's doing, which is weird. It'll just sit there, but it's actually doing something. Now it's doing the filter curve EQ. Perfect. I just love that this is all automated. It's doing the RMS normalize and limiter now. I don't know why it's not showing it, but that's what it's doing. And then now it's doing our final round of noise reduction. Check that out. Let's do our ACX check. And look, we've passed again, except we've got that warning for too low noise floor. That just did all of our mastering for that 5-minute chapter. Going to take longer for a 15-minute chapter or a 30-minute chapter, but using that macro, it automates it. I don't even have to think about it every time. You just have to do the work to set it up to start out with, which is just awesome. I love it. All right, let's close this out. Not going to save. Let's get back into the one that we already did save, sample edit. All right, we have a mastered track now. Our next video is going to talk about, the next video is going to talk about editing. And there's a lot of different things that we do with editing. So I'm going to show you kind of the basic way that I set up my editing to make it go smoother, to deal with breath sounds and with lots of other little noises that come in between the phrases that we're saying. So I'm going to show you that in the next one. We'll talk about how to edit, how to do some basic editing, especially with breaths. And then we'll do another video where we talk about using EQ, filter curve EQ, for a bunch of the editing things that we do. So, and we may do that all in one video. We'll see. But the filter curve EQ stuff is really important to get a good handle on. So yeah, up next is editing, and I am also going to insert a video about how to set up your microphone properly. Hope this was helpful, and let me know if you have any questions. You're always welcome to leave questions in the comments or go to carolbethanderson.com to leave me questions.